So reading from Deuteronomy chapter 21. If a man is found slain lying in a field in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess, it is not known who killed him. Your elders and judges shall go out to measure the distance from the body to the neighbouring towns. Then the elders of the town nearest the body shall take a heifer that has never been worked and has never worn a yoke, and lead her down to a valley that has not been ploughed or planted, and where there is a flowing stream. There in the valley they are to break the heifer's neck. The priests, the sons of Levi, shall step forward for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister and to pronounce blessings in the name of the Lord, to decide all cases of dispute and assault. Then all the elders of the town nearest the body shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley, and they shall declare, our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. Accept this atonement for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, O Lord. And do not hold your people guilty of the blood of an innocent man. The bloodshed will be atoned for. So you will purge from yourselves the guilt of shedding innocent blood, since you have done what is right in the eyes of the Lord. When you go to war against your enemies and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands and you take captives, if you notice among the captives a beautiful woman and are attracted to her, you may take her as your wife. Bring her into your home and have her shave her head, trim her nails, and put aside the clothes she was wearing when captured. After she has lived in your house and mourned her father and mother for a full month, then you may go to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. If you are not pleased with her, let her go wherever she wishes. You must not sell her or treat her as a slave, since you have dishonoured her. If a man has 2 wives, and he loves one but not the other, and both bear him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the wife he does not love, when he wills his property to his sons, he must not give the rights of the firstborn to the son of the wife he loves in preference to his actual firstborn, the son of the wife he does not love. He must acknowledge the son of his unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double share of all he has. That son is the first sign of his father's strength. The right of the firstborn belongs to him. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who does not obey his father and mother, and will not listen to them when they discipline him, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders at the gate of his town. They shall say to the elders, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious, he will not obey us, he is a profligate and a drunkard. Then all the men of his town shall stone him to death. You must purge the evil from among you. All Israel will hear of it and be afraid. If a man guilty of a capital offence is put to death and his body is hung on a tree, you must not leave his body on the tree overnight. Be sure to bury him that same day, because anyone who is hung on a tree is under God's curse. You must not desecrate the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. So what seems like an odd series of laws, but really they're a continuation of the exposition of the 6th commandment. And again, the laws are intended for the protection of the vulnerable. God is concerned for the vulnerable, and here there is an emphasis on the rights of the individual. Do you notice, though, that the chapter is topped and tailed by God saying the same thing? Verse 1, that the land is a divine gift, so there is a need to cleanse the land. And then again, verse 23, the land is a divine gift and needs to be cleansed. A reminder of why what is going to be said in the intervening verses is so important. God is concerned about what happens in his land to his people. Now, verses 1 to 9 deal with the murder or a manslaughter when it's not clear who the murderer is. A body has been found in open land. Now, the first thing that has to happen is that the elders and judges go out and work out whose city is closest to the body. The elders of the nearest town then have to perform a purification rite. Now, notice, it's the elders, not the priests. This is a ritual that's going to take place, not a sacrifice. And the elders are acting on behalf of the town. You see, when wrongdoing happens amongst the people, and for us, read the church or the state, you can't just shrug your shoulders and walk away. See, in this case, there are certain actions that have to be taken, but the town bears collective responsibility. They may be innocent of the murder or the sin, but all share a responsibility for it. And this is how it's to be in our churches. We ourselves may not have sinned, but we share a responsibility for it. And we need to collectively confess it. Why? Well, what has happened amongst our people, our family. There is guilt in our midst, and that has to be purged. It can't be ignored, but dealt with adequately and properly. So every Sunday morning when we're having our services, as well as our own sins, it's the sins of the church we should be confessing and asking God to forgive and pleading with him to act in mercy. The second case cited by Moses has to do with marrying a captive woman. The army has won a war, and as happens time and time again, the victors take the women. A girl is perhaps taken as a prisoner of war and could be chosen as a wife. Now, there are 4 conditions that have to be met. She has to cut her hair. Hair symbolises life. Then her nails. 2 Samuel chapter 19 tells us that this is a sign of purification. She has to change her clothes. Leviticus chapter 11 tells us this is a sign of uncleanness. And then she has to spend a month of mourning for her parents, saying goodbye to her old life. But when the man grows tired of her, she can't be cast aside. Now that's different and more positive than what would have happened in other cultures at the time. And as a writer called Chris Wright puts it, the physical and emotional needs of the woman in her utter vulnerability are given moral and legal priority over the desires and claims of the man in his victorious strength. She couldn't be treated as a slave or property anymore. So captives brought into the land were to be treated differently from the culture around them. So likewise, when people join us, who are different to us, they have the same rights and say as the rest of us. Those who join our membership, or in Anglican terms our electoral roll, all have the same rights, regardless of how they came to know Jesus, regardless of their sex, their ethnic background, their social class. Everyone has equal rights and an equal say. Then following on from that, there's the case of what happens to a firstborn son born to a woman that the man no longer loves. Well, that firstborn son's rights are to be protected. The father is to show no favouritism. Normal practice is to be followed, and the firstborn son is to be allocated his portion of the inheritance, whether the first wife, his mother, is loved or not. And here we see another principle that can help us in our church life together. Not to show favouritism, whether we like a person or not, but to follow the rules and the procedures. In a church like the church in Wales, an Anglican church, those rules and procedures are there for a reason. They're there to help us and to protect us. So we are not to show favouritism in our dealings with people. The rights and say of everybody within the church community are to be protected. And then the fourth case, another unusual one, but really it involves self-indulgence. It's about protecting parents from a rebellious son. Now note the language of verse 19, take hold of him, bring him to the elders, seems to imply he's a teenager, not an adult son. And the son won't listen to his parents, verse 20. Why is this an issue? Well, it's because he's not fit to receive his inheritance and will stir up rebellion. And so the parents are to go to the elders, but not pass judgment themselves. The elders take responsibility for the judgment and then for the punishment. You see, being an elder, however we may think of it in our case, Anglican terms, we sometimes think is a privilege, and it is. It can be a source of power for some, but it also comes with responsibility. And sometimes that responsibility may not be very nice. And notice again, who's to do the stoning? Well, it's those who pass the judgment. There's no washing hands of it. We have to take responsibility for the consequences of our decisions, of our actions. And although the death penalty may seem very harsh to us, Israel's stability depended upon obedience. If he couldn't obey his parents, would he obey God? Then notice how the son is described in verse 20. Some of the other translations of the Bible actually translate it a little bit better than mine. He's described as a glutton and a drunkard. Now, those two terms are also linked in Proverbs, the other place where they're linked. Proverbs chapter 23. Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. It's basically describing someone who's self-indulgent and has lost respect for his parents. It's about self-indulgence at the expense of obedience to God. And there's no place for that within the people of God. There's no place for that within the church, within our fellowships. Being self-indulgent, wanting to do what we want to do, and not obeying God. Then there's a final section on protecting the land from defilement. Remember that the land was God's gift to the people. It was precious to God, and he doesn't want it being unclean. The church is precious to him. It's described as his bride. God doesn't want to see the church marred, that image tainted. And when it is, he wants serious action taken against the perpetrators. It's that important to him. Here in Deuteronomy, it's the death penalty. In New Testament times, it's excommunication from the church. It's that serious. So 5 principles that help in running the church in a way that's pleasing to God. Don't shrug your shoulders and walk away. Take responsibility. Treat people differently from the way our surrounding culture treats people. That might be about the respect for the rights of women, for the rights of slaves, for the rights of those who, in Deuteronomy's case, are captives, but the rights of everyone, even including, especially including those who may traditionally be disenfranchised. Then 3, show no favouritism in your dealings with fellow members of the church. 4thly, don't tolerate self-indulgence. And finally, God does not want his church marred. It's his bride. It's precious to him. His son's blood was shed for it. And he asks us to take serious action when it